Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm an immigrant, and I grew up in Bermuda, so when I say good afternoon to you, you're supposed to say good afternoon back. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak today. I am honored to join you for this campaign school, and I want to thank Delane from Springtide for inviting me. I understand Springtide continues to work toward better engagement in the democratic process, and I think we should always be welcoming of that. So good on them, and that is in large part what I would like to speak with you about today. So I want to begin today with saying that I truly believe that we are on our way toward a more equitable, representative, inclusive, and exciting future. But everyone here knows that that's not going to happen by osmosis. Let us remove any doubt that, and I just want to back up to say in Mark's introduction, perhaps I should let you know straight up that I'm definitely a social inclusion advocate. I am an equity advocate, and so I speak very clearly, and I'm positioned and located as that, and so we'll certainly not be stretching away from that in my remarks today. So my worldview, if you like, is one toward social justice. And for any of you, it is important to know that social justice and equity, the road to get there, is a deliberate, strategic, difficult, and relentless struggle. We can't afford to be tired or timid about it. We must be ready to learn, to explore, and to be transformed, and we must be ready to lead. But to get to where you want to go, I think we must understand why we want to get there, and what we will gain, and how we can keep moving forward. In keeping with the name of my presentation, we need to know who we are, who they are, all of them, across their diversity. It is a natural thing to want to demonstrate success, and in so doing, to gloss over those things that were not and are not so flattering about our Nova Scotia reality. I have witnessed and participated in some of the most progressive times in the history of this province as an African-descended woman living in the African diaspora, as a public servant with the Nova Scotia government, and in my ongoing work in community. But on my way to the here and now, like many of you, I have witnessed denial, stonewalling, naysaying, and an endless narrative of, it's not the right time, they're not ready, the message is too negative, and so on. So today, I believe it is important to acknowledge that we are finally at a place of no return, no going back, and progressive movement forward in a province that is committed to implementing positive change. Colleagues like you, all of you, will keep us moving forward because you have the courage to learn from looking back. So let's spend some time today looking back and looking forward together. Next slide. So in 1 minute or less, the history of the diversity of Nova Scotia. I'm only half kidding. Obvious to all is that Indigenous people are the first people of Nova Scotia. But there was and is great diversity among Indigenous people. So the notion of diversity is not new in Canada. In Nova Scotia, the Mi'kmaq are certainly not a homogeneous population. They have different values and beliefs, different needs and challenges. So the relevance of diversity within as well as among populations can't be overstressed. The breadth of diversity has always been so. So differences in income, in social advantage, in sex and age and sexual orientation and gender identity and expression, in color, in faith perspectives, have also been in place since our time began. The isms have also been there from the beginning, along with the people. Sexism, racism, heterosexism, classism, ableism have been there and have been and are systemic. Our aim cannot be to deny these facts, but rather to identify these as the inequities that they are and to respond to them in the way we plan our society and carry out our work in whatever level of government we are in. Our migrations of Nova Scotia, or to Nova Scotia, of Europeans, of African-descended people, of Acadian people, have changed the Maritimes over 500 years. This diversity of race, language, culture, and the inequity that went with it is not new either. Over time, immigration and planned immigration of more people from non-European countries continues to this day, and it's going to increase. With this comes a rich diversity of language, culture, faith perspectives, spirituality, and worldviews. For years, it has been understood that Arabic was the most widely spoken language in Halifax HRM after English. And now we have a welcome influx of Syrian refugees, Syrian people. They don't like to be called refugees, so you know. And this linguistic diversity is going to increase even further. Intersectionality speaks to all of the aspects of identity that show up in us. Individuals don't come through the door with one thing, per se. Each person is many things. A Francophone Acadian woman with a disability living in a rural area of Nova Scotia on a fixed income is an example. Probably you know her, right? That's a very common, not far-fetched combination of identities. This woman may identify the most important and most meaningful aspect of her identity as her Acadian heritage. However, how she encounters, understands, and responds to government systems is first as an Acadian woman, but there are other aspects that need to be addressed as well. So this combined identity, also known as intersectionality, is important to remember in good government. We need to respect what the person sees as important and recognize that this aspect intersects with others. Now, in marginalized populations, intersectionality also includes layers of inequities and disadvantage. And what we mean by marginalized are those who are outside of the majority most often, who have less power and are often minorities. I use that word advisedly. So the fact that they are marginalized is part of their lived reality. That is what marginalizes them. You understand? So one goes before the other. They become marginalized. They aren't born to be marginalized, they become marginalized by their life, their lived reality in this province. So we have to then wonder, if all this is so, how do we provide quality, equitable government services to all of us who call Nova Scotia home? One important way is with culturally effective service. And I would say that cultural effectiveness is a pathway toward equity. It is by no means the only one. So the importance of public policy and systemic change that includes work across sectors to address what we know in the healthcare system as the social determinants of health, and what I'm talking about are such areas as poverty reduction, education, transportation, which is well known to municipal councilors, the importance of that, and other areas as well. All of these are essential to equity. But I stand firmly that these areas of systemic change will only be effective with the intersection of cultural effectiveness, so that those among the most marginalized and disadvantaged are reached and are participants in the systemic change. So having said that then, the notion of equity is one that promotes fairness and justice. It is not the same as equality, in the sense that equal usually means exactly the same. You take an apple, you cut it right down the center, one side is equal to the other. That is not the equity we seek. The equity we seek may often look different and materialize as different approaches and responses given the unique needs of the community or population served. So then, I am also an advocate of the development of cultural competence across government systems. And that is the awareness, knowledge, skills, and policies needed to better serve Nova Scotians across their diversity. It is a lifetime learning, not a goal to be reached or a box to be ticked. I often say that cultural competence is a journey, not a destination. But standing still is not an option. Cultural competence is also two-way traffic. It is not a relentless mission to know about every culture on earth, but rather an openness to recognizing one's own beliefs, values, and biases, and being transformed through better understanding other worldviews, other ways of being and doing, and being enriched by this insight. Cultural safety is a concept that for us in Nova Scotia is recognized as beginning with and having significant relevance to Indigenous people in general and the Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia. It began with Maori, the Indigenous people of New Zealand, Maori nurses in New Zealand, who identified the need for those who receive service to be empowered to define the outcome and experience of the service as safe. Given the colonial trauma experienced by Indigenous people, the path to safe care, safe service must include building trust with them, respecting their beliefs and values, as well as recognizing the inequities, the unfairness of power differentials in the history, the politics that still impacts their lives. So with all this in mind, we can look at who we are, and let me insert the importance of having a diverse and representative workforce here, something we don't have yet in this province, and we must address. So let's look at who we are, as well as how we serve. and how we serve in new ways that adapt our everyday work accordingly so that we can respond to needs in relevant and specific ways. So then, how about it? How far along the path are we? The world is full of powerful girls and women, some of whom have yet to be allowed a voice or to find one. Like some of the people on this slide, the women in your Nova Scotia neighborhood are among the most humble, most marginalized, most denied, and most relentless. They are also among the most privileged of women in positions of power and influence, or born into a world that gives them more opportunities just because of what they look like and the family that they are born into. Now, you might think that I am suggesting that the more privileged women in Nova Scotia will not need your service and attention. Wrong. Indeed, the more privileged people, regardless of their gender, will demand your service and attention. But understand, the most privileged women that you serve are, as a collective, still paid less than their male counterparts, still waiting for equity in the workplace and workplace policies that address their work-life balance as mothers, wives, and family caregivers. They will also be treated like they are just too pushy, too shrill, too angry. They may be asked to smile more and be more ladylike, to soften their hairstyles or show off great clothes, to prove that they don't enjoy sexual violence in their pursuit of justice. Get the picture? And this at a time when the Trumpster compares the looks of our sisters to the South, ridicules their menstrual cycles, and wants them punished before changing his mind, opportunistically 2 times, for their very personal choices. So all women are still paying for simply being women. It seems to matter not that we outnumber the men in the province. This is the only example of being in the majority where it seems the majority doesn't actually count. However, the most marginalized people that you will serve, women at the very bottom of that list, don't even hear their issues discussed. They rarely hear any voices talking about their reality. They don't sometimes even believe they are entitled to voice time or face time, to government funding, or to even hearing their own voices. They are trying to get out of bed in the morning, if they have a bed. They are interested in trying to feed their children. And to understand the systemic isms like racism that translates to things like avoiding shopping while black, never getting a promotion, never seeing themselves in positions of power and authority, seldom seeing themselves reflected in the health system as providers and never as health executives, and rarely in the education and justice systems, except, of course, in their disproportionate numbers behind bars for longer periods of time. Many of you are going to walk extraordinary paths as political representatives. You will need to serve all of them. But before you do, please look back in order to move forward. Remember that brilliant and able African-American Shirley Chisholm ran for the presidency of the United States and failed as far back as 1972. She always knew that Black lives matter, but as you must all have heard, Black people are still having to prove that. Remember that Catherine Wynne is the first out and proud lesbian premier in Canada, that Malala took a bullet for raising her voice for girls' education, and that Indigenous women are still fighting for justice for our murdered and missing sisters. And watch the ways in which Hillary, with the privilege of race, education, and influence, is still maliciously targeted and constructively dismantled because she dared to serve as Secretary of State and is able to speak competently to complex policy concerns locally and globally. Be informed by the lived reality of these people and by the needs of all the people in your communities. You see, the most marginalized in your neighborhoods are waiting for you to name it. Name the needs of persons with disabilities trying to find pathways to become who they are meant to be. Or the new Canadians still on the receiving end of xenophobia, Islamophobia, and exclusion. I understand that permanent residents are still waiting for the opportunity to vote in the municipal elections, even despite the positive change in some attitudes toward welcoming them. And I maintain that this is a key indication of where we have to go, because when those who have proven their participation in communities, paid their taxes, and brought their skills and talents to our economies are not able to participate in democracy and exercise that right to vote, we clearly have work to do. And what of same-sex couples and transgender folks waiting for services and government planning that honors their identity and assures their children that they are deserving celebrants of Family Day? So remember, and yes, Dr. Phil said it, but it bears repeating, you cannot change what you will not acknowledge. Don't deny that systemic isms exist. They do. So work to change them. Define your vision for change, because if you don't, someone else will. Don't rely on style over substance. They are not equal. If you're going to take pictures with marginalized people, you better intend to act on their policy needs and priorities too. Recognize that your job is to serve people across their diversity and stand firm against criticism that you spend too much time on the marginalized. There is a shift happening in this province and in this country and in this world. And you will do well to recognize that minority concerns are the equity issues of today and will be the concerns well into the future. And welcome the new day of more representation by and for the people in your communities that haven't yet had a voice. You will not win or keep your seat by doing what's always been done. Represent the future, because that is where we are all going. Many of you are going to walk extraordinary paths as political representatives. You will need to serve all of them, everyone. But before you do, rather than wonder who is in your neighborhood or community, it may be better to ask, who am I and how will I serve? And to always, in the words of the admittedly flawed but always brilliant former President Bill Clinton and husband of the next American president. You heard it here. Use the power of your example, not the example of your power. Thank you.